Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, there are so many elements in the making of film and television that just elevate the game to the next level. And guess what? If you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. And you know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to make that leap and assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. And if you are, please keep listening and subscribe. Hit that old subscribe button, give us a little 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So please go ahead and give us a like and subscribe there as well, because we'd really appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, the Threads, the Blue Sky, the... I'm losing track. There's so many, but we're in the seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it all that much more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please do us that ultimate kindness. Come on by and pay us a visit. If you didn't already know, we're in the middle of Emmy Consideration season, and we've been talking with a myriad of people who work behind the scenes on all your favorite TV shows to give it that little extra pop, that little extra zap, that appreciation. And we talked with one of the editors on one of my favorite shows, Only Murders in the Building, which is available on Disney Plus. And we had the chance to talk with the editor, Matthew Barbato, just to talk about sort of the different stylistic challenges that come on board with trying to give every episode their own look, and do things sort of differently, and just sort of the relationship that's involved creatively between the editor, the director, the cinematographer, and all that sort of fun stuff to really make sure that every episode has its own distinct feel. We got some real good insight with Matthew on the art of editing, and I mean, and the great job that he did on Only Murders in the Building season 4. But like I said, he's a veteran editor. He's done a lot of stuff on shows like Veep, Good Place, Lessons in Chemistry, but he does some great work here. But well, like I said, we love talking to people behind the scenes because it's important to really get to really know how the stuff gets made. And as always, check out Only Murders in the Building, which is obviously on Disney Plus now. But enjoy our talk with Matthew Barbato if you want a little bit of insight onto the art of editing. And well, I got some, and I think you will too, because it's a good conversation. We'll talk to you soon.
I appreciate you having me on.
Now, I mean, obviously, first off, man, just thank you so much for the time. And I mean, congrats on the work on the show.
Thank you.
Obviously, I love it, but I mean, it's I guess my first question is like I'm always curious how people come on board like projects like this, because I mean, when you're an editor, I can imagine the job is kind of either on one end you're separate from the whole process, or you're sort of very invested in the process, depending on what stage you come into the production of the show. Like, walk me through sort of when you first came on the show.
Yeah, well, no matter how you come out of the show, you ultimately become invested in the show,
Right.
or you should become invested in the show. This was an interesting one because I had done a network show for Fox Century, 20th Century Fox a while back, and I worked with a great post supervisor on that show. And then I kind of drifted off from the network world and I got into streaming and more kind of longer form stuff. And he and I looked for opportunities to work together again, but I was kind of not doing the network thing for a while. Eventually, he made his way up to VP of Post at Fox, and he called me, and I hadn't really spoken with him in a long time. And he said, I think I have a project that you actually might be interested in now. And he said, it's Steve Martin and Martin Short. And I was like, okay, done. Whatever that is, I'm in. I'm a lifelong fan of both of them. I have very fond memories I saw The Jerk in the movie theater. Like, I am in. And I hadn't read any scripts. So I had to interview, and he put me up to interview with the producers and the showrunner, and it went well. And yeah, and everything kind of proceeded from there. I got brought on as the second editor of the first season. And then after the first season, I ended up having a conflict with my schedule. I got a feature, and so I couldn't go back for the second and third season, but I was extremely lucky to be brought back for the fourth, and now we're doing the fifth season.
Is an editor's room on a show like this almost like a writer's room? Because there's never one guy. It always feels like there's a team of people.
Well, it's sort of yes, sort of no. I also say the thing about this is the first season of this show was done during COVID, and it was one of
Right.
the I had done a pilot, and then so we, it's also shot in New York. All the editors are in LA, so it's a completely 100% remote show.
Oh,
I
wow. Okay.
cut this thing from my house, as all the editors do, and the only time we see other crew members is when we go to the mix stage. So that's it. So we've gotten, because of COVID, we had to learn how to use the remote systems and get used to that. And our showrunner luckily did because it's for editors, I think it works for us and we can work with it. It's always better to be in the room, but especially on this show, we've gotten into a real work rhythm and that we can work very easily and we get the product that we want at the end. Um, but as far as a writer's room, it just goes through a bunch of layers of notes processes. You work first with the director, and then you have the showrunner steps in, and then it goes to the EPs. So there's a handful of executive producers they get to chime in. Then it goes back to the showrunner, and then once he's happy with it, it goes to the network. And in our case, in some shows, it's you go to the network, you get notes, you do those, you send it back to the studio. In this case, the network and the studio are the same round of notes, so we're lucky we cut out one layer there. And then there's two or three back and forths with them, in terms of what they want, and then the showrunner and the network kind of come to an agreement on which notes they want to do, or and sometimes you can't do the notes. Um, and yeah, so it's funny because it takes a little while. And while you're waiting, doing all that process, waiting for people to look at it and see notes, you're also starting on your next episode and doing sort of overlapping with all those different people.
Well, that brings me to my next question. Like, when you start your process, do they basically have everything in the can, or are they more or less uploading you dailies?
Uploading daily. So everything I get today was shot yesterday.
Wow.
And so we try to get into it and make sure we have everything we need and give feedback to the set in case, and very rarely does this happen, but there may be, some coverage that we could use or something's awry. But for the most part, that really doesn't happen. We put it together. They shoot great stuff and we get to put it together.
I can
On
imagine the editing room doesn't want to have to say to the set that we need a pickup shot.
It's not the best because, shooting is really tough and production it's a very time consuming. There's a lot of pressure on set. And if you throw them one more task that they have to do on a day, it kind of throws their day out. They're not happy about it, but we're all trying to make the best possible product. So if, we're all working together to get what we need. And if we need something, they get it.
Yeah. Does the process change for you from, say, a feature to a show like this, or is it just a question of having to keep track of more stuff that's going on through the arc of the run?
Features and TV are different. TV's much more kind of a rapid pace. You're getting in footage, you're cutting it, people are reviewing it, and you're getting to a conclusion a lot more quickly. You're
Right.
getting usually more footage per day in TV.
Mm.
In features, you're usually getting less footage and you have more time to kind of go through it. The process is kind of spread out a bunch. The the hierarchy of who gets what's said, who gets a bigger say is kind of shifted a little bit. And there's a lot more sort of time and attention that goes into it to a point sometimes where you're kind of like twiddling your thumbs, waiting for the next piece to come in so that you have something to do. And then, there's busy times with features too, but TV is, and what I think a lot of people like about it is that once they greenlight it and it's going, it's sort of a moving train. It's off and running. It's getting written. It's getting shot. It's getting edited, and it's getting posted and delivered to the studio. It's gonna happen, and there's a little room for fudging the schedule, but for the most part, it's just going.
How does the job change when, and I mean, this feels like a loaded question, but again, something I was curious about, because obviously on something like this, you're invested in the run, like you kind of know the whole arc. But I mean, I can imagine there are shows where it's like, okay, do this show. Like, how do you sort of distinguish between the two to sort of be able to bring sort of your creative energy and flow to the project.
Let me make sure I understand. Are you saying like because I'm invested in particular episodes, how do I then?
Right, like if you're not necessarily sort of invested in the whole season, you're just focusing on one episode.
Yeah. Well, you do have to balance it. And so, as we go through the seasons, we're watching the cuts of other episodes to see
Right.
where they are. We're having conversations amongst the editors about certain, especially with this that has so much mystery plot and character kind of arcs that are happening, that we're checking with each other about what shots were used and that's constantly shifting until they lock picture. The cut of the previous episode that I watched that was a director's cut could have drastically changed. So we try and keep each other up to date on what's happening and how it's going to affect each other's episodes. And you just have to sort of pay attention and find stuff. And every once in a while you go, you realize that you let a piece kind of go out of joint that you have to go back and fix and finish. We still deliver all of these and lock all of the shows more or less in order. So it's not like we wait till the very end and we do it all at once. So we do have to pay attention and make sure we're doing what we have to do. And if there were, and there's never been, but if there were ever a huge emergency where we realized we forgot to put a clue in episode one, we would go back and fix that. But the writing staff is tremendous. The producers are tremendous. There's a lot of people's eyes on this that are making sure we're staying on the track.
When you're working as an editor on a show, like, especially if there's a team, do you tend to work on, say, sort of a clump of shows, or does it sort of go back and forth? Because, I mean, I looked through all the stuff that you've done. I mean, like, you did a few Veeps, but I mean, again, they were all pretty close together. You've done other shows, but they're all pretty close together. There isn't a question of, okay, I did two in season one, and then three in season three, and then four in season five kind of thing.
No, the way it works generally in most shows, and it can change, but the standard is that you either have two or three editors, sometimes four, but two or three editors on a half-hour comedy show, and you just line up in rotation. And so first editor is one, second two, third three. On Only Murders in the Building, there's always three of us, and then the first editor goes to number four. And then so in season one and season four, I did 3, 6, and 9.
Right.
And then on this season, I came in and now we've had some shuffling of episodes in the fifth season, so it's not gonna be regular like that. When it comes out, you'll see, those will all shift. But it's ostensibly I was supposed to do 2, 5, and 8.
Have you gotten to
And
be sort of, have you had moments, have you been able to have a moment on set, or have you been completely separate from the process during this entire run?
I've never been to set for this show.
Wow.
Yeah. My other editor, or one of the other editors on the show, Shelley Westerman, she went this year for the first time. She went before editing started. She was there for a couple of days because she really wanted to see it. I'd love to go as well, but I just didn't have an opportunity. Maybe next season.
Now I'm curious, man, what got you into editing? Because obviously, as we all know, to make these great TV shows and movies that we love, it takes a village. Like, what was it about editing that sort of was the path that drew you into it?
I hear that this is a fairly standard answer for editors, but I did not set out to be an editor.
It is a fairly standard answer, so you're right.
Yeah. I wanted to be a feature film director, and if not that, a cinematographer. I set my sights for New York City thinking, I'm going to go get onto the camera department somehow. And I got a job. My first job was essentially answering phones for a very small production company. And shortly after I got there, they got a series because they had done mostly sports documentaries and sort of one-off things, but they got a fictional children's series. It was a ghost stories for kids for Nickelodeon, and they just turned to me, who had gotten there a month or two previously, and I was answering phones, and they said, "You want to be an assistant editor?" And I had edited some stuff, and so I understood the process a bit, but it was the first time they had ever used nonlinear systems, so they got this brand new nonlinear system, and of course I would do anything. I don't want to be a receptionist. I
Of
want
course,
to
yeah.
be involved. So I became their assistant editor, and editing for some reason, to me was like an afterthought, and it always came fairly easy to me. So I never thought of it as a thing you pursue, or it was like something that you do at the end to get things together. And and when they gave me the opportunity to finally edit, I was like, yeah, this is what you do. You just put this shot here. And like in my head, I was always editing. And so I had success with it, and people responded well to it. So And I just kept getting more opportunities to do it. And eventually I I did it's this was a lot of this was back in the early days of like a lot of unscripted stuff in New York
Mm.
and the cable boom and stuff like that. But all these other opportunities came up to operate camera on shows and to direct unscripted shows. And so I did a lot of that too, and that was really satisfying to get to do a bunch of different things. But in this last part of my career, it's been, scripted content editing.
How do you get to sort of flex your creative muscles? Because I mean, at the end of the day, I kind of think of like going way, way back to the old Hitchcock line of, him only shooting what he needs, so his editor doesn't script the movie. It feels like the creative bond and process between sort of the showrunner, the director, the DP, the editor, it's all very kind of intertwined now,
It is, and it all depends on the team that you are, collaborating with.
for sure.
And I think that there are some situations that I've been in that are more, the balance of power gets shifted around a bunch.
Mm.
And there's more opportunities in some situations than there are in others to express yourself and be collaborative. I was really excited on Only Murders season 4 to be given this episode 406, which was this documentary. It was like a faux documentary
Right, right, right,
episode.
right.
And that one, there's on this show, Only Murders, there's always opportunity to collaborate and to bring new ideas and try different things, and the showrunner is very open to that. So that episode in particular was left wide open with the idea that it would come together in the edit room like a documentary would, because it was supposed to be created by these fictional characters, the brothers, sisters. So they wanted it to have a point of view that was from our characters who were also suspects in that particular episode. So in that, getting to edit that, it gave me an opportunity to really play around with editing style, add a bunch of things that weren't in the script, solve problems that weren't, but they shot a lot of great footage, and they really thought through what they wanted, but they also left a lot of things, like they didn't really think through transitions from scene to scene and what the style of it was going to be. So I got to spend a lot of time investing my own ideas into it, adding little things, coming up. There's a whole part of it in the beginning that has I mean, they're pretentious filmmakers,
Of
these
course, yeah,
sisters.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so they have like little examples of early films, and I just channeled my, college age pretension and just said, well, what would be the goofiest thing I would do to try and like show off here, and just added those kind of flourishes to things, but also just, adding chyrons and things like that weren't scripted, just to build the world so that it this show always tries to experiment and do new things, and there's fantasy sequences, all sorts of things that we do. In season 1, there's the boy in apartment 2B. I think it's 2B or 3B. 3B. I always forget that. And that's an experimental episode where it's told from the point of view of a deaf person.
Yeah.
This one, I think, pushed a little farther because it, we always have to juggle the character development. Each of our main characters are going through a growth process through all these seasons, but there's also this murder mystery that we have to service, and then there's the comedy that's kind of just jam-packed into all the places. With this, we had to do that, but through the lens of characters we don't even know, and so putting that together took a little bit of thought and a little bit of effort in order to get all of 4 of those things across to the audience and still have them enjoy it and get all the information they need so they can go on to the next episode and follow the murder mystery, but still feel like they've had this unique experience.
And I think that was one of my favorite ones, to be honest, because it again that's something that draw has drawn me into the show. It still stays inside the procedural box, but it's not afraid to sort of bounce off the walls a little bit and sort of and give us something different and experiential as it goes through the whole arc.
Yeah, try to keep you guessing.
I love it, man. I love it. But I mean, just
Yeah.
to just to put a bow on this, it's a silly question, but it's one I like to ask. Was there a movie or a moment in your life that had the light bulb go off and say, you know what, I got to do this. I got to be involved in this. I got in storytelling some way.
Gosh, I got to come up with a great answer for that. But recently James Foley died,
Yeah.
and it really was, I was reminiscing because at close range, I think I
Oh,
was in
oh
high
my God,
school,
yeah.
and I just remember seeing that movie and it really blew me away. And it was performance, and it was just quietly directed. It wasn't flashy.
Mm.
Um, that one really knocked my socks off. And then before that, The Jerk.
Two very good answers. But I mean, my friend, honestly, thank you for the work and the perspective on working on a show like this. And thanks for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it, David. Thank you.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.